This is about digital assessment. So this is, although it just has my name on it, it's really a team effort from the Department of Electrical Engineering and Electronics. So this is quite literally a case of reflect, revise, and reimagine. This is how our department struggled to find a way to provide our students with a consistent and familiar form of assessment as we were plunged into the pandemic. So the bedrock of assessment in engineering is a formal examination. So many modules don't have any other assessment component. It's 100% examination. So we rely on examinations, formal examinations, very heavily. So we wanted to provide the students with something tangible, something familiar, and something defensible that we could defend as a formal and fair assessment method. So just before lockdown, we had a Board of Studies meeting that's almost surreal when we remember it. It was a hybrid meeting, and we had to decide how are we going to assess our students, ensure that people progress and graduate, have their correct classifications while adhering to normal QA procedures, and giving the student a fairly undisrupted experience and without overloading our staff. It was a really big big task. So what we considered as alternatives to our formal examinations was lots of coursework. But remember, this is March, so it was just before Easter, and we didn't have much time to plan coursework, and everything was already set up for exams. We considered postponing our exams until October because we were optimistic, hoping that perhaps we'd all be back on campus in October. We thought of replacing exams with interview-style, vivas, where we interview our students and test their understanding. But the sheer logistics of that made that impractical. We thought of online proctored exams, but again, we have classes with 350 students then, so that would have been impractical. We considered using online vital tests on Blackboard. We discounted that because we couldn't ensure everyone had an undisrupted internet connection from wherever they were around the world at the time. So we ended up with something we call exam replacements, so open book exam replacements. And I'll try to explain how that worked. So in April, we decided on a process flow, and we had some conditions, some criteria. We wanted a clear pathway and sequence of activities where the roles of the different stakeholders wouldn't overlap. So students, the Student Support Office, examiners, moderators, external examiners. They each needed to have their own workflow that didn't overlap. It was critical for us to ensure that marking remained anonymous. That's vital to our QA and how our assessments happen. So we had to maintain marking, anonymous marking. We realized that Vital wasn't always available to all students, so we needed to find an alternative pathway for students who couldn't access Vital. So you can see that that second branch in the flowchart. That's for students who wouldn't have access to Vital. We needed to ensure marking and moderation could happen, and that we could export marks without compromising the integrity of the marks and without compromising the visibility of the marks, so the students wouldn't see their marks while this was happening. And we needed to maintain a route for extenuating circumstances. So one aspect was making sure our colleagues were on board with this, so we created an illustrated guide for the examiners on what they needed to do. So it was important that examiners had a familiar interface. The procedure was fast and simple, not reliant on a a fast internet connection or any particular software. It should be open to moderation and scrutiny, anonymity to be preserved, a way to prevent any form of local download so people can't download scripts onto their computers. Grades are backed up instantly and visible to the administrators instantly. So all this was communicated to staff in a sort of visual handbook. If I had more time, I would have shown you this live, but here are some still screenshots from our Vital sessions. So from our Vital module, what we ended up doing is creating a central module, sort of a pseudo module, to house all the exams. So rather than putting the exams in their individual modules, we brought everything together into one central module that was out of reach for the examiners. The examiners couldn't meddle with this. This was a central module with all the exams in it. So all the information here, exam submission instructions, FAQs, timetables, a mock exam, late submission guidelines, how will late submissions be treated, extenuating circumstances, everything on the one page. So important considerations. It was important that the Vital page was clearly signposted with links going backwards and forwards from every page, so students don't get stranded on a particular page, don't get lost, and can easily navigate. We needed to communicate the timetable to the students in advance of the exams. They needed to know what to expect, how to scan their documents, how to upload it, and we put together a fairly detailed FAQ. And we created a discussion board where students could ask our head of department anything. We put together a mock exam, which was just a set of straightforward questions, allowing students to practice their ability to handwrite, scan, upload, etc., to test whether their IT was really up to it. Other considerations? What we had, it was a single module, so therefore a single entry point, a single portal. So admin, staff, external examiners, students, all entered from a single point. So it was much easier to control who had access, who had permissions, who did what and where, because there was a digital log of everything. Examiners were only markers, so they can't mess up the module, they can't fiddle with grade, the center, they can't make any changes to any of the settings. And that was important because when you've got 20 odd examiners navigating the same Vital page, that's a recipe for disaster. It was very important that lifting anonymity, exporting marks, moderating, handling late penalties is done with great coordination and caution. So these are considerations we had to sort of think about back in April. This is what the students got in terms of guidelines. So they had 2 weeks to look at this and to practice how they would take their submissions and upload to Vital. So we offered them 5 different routes as suggestions. They could scan using a scanning app, they could write on a tablet, they could use a scanner, or they could word process. We tried to make it as automated as possible. So in Vital, it's possible for links to magically appear and disappear at different times using something called adaptive release. It's sort of possible in Canvas, not the same. What we had to do was every morning we'd have someone from the admin team posing as a student to test every exam, to test every link, to make sure everything was visible the way it should be and operated the way it should be. We learned that the hard way because things don't always look the way you expect them to look. So student view on Vital isn't very good. We also ask students to complete an academic integrity test or a declaration before every exam. So before they submit every exam, they need to acknowledge 4 important statements and answer a few questions about their understanding of what is and isn't acceptable in terms of academic integrity and the consequences of any academic misconduct. For students without access to Vital, or if Vital crashed, as it did, we created a backup submission route. So that was the best £20 I spent last year. We subscribed to something called Jot Form, and it's really just an online form, but it enabled students to request exam papers and to download, upload their papers without accessing Vital. Now, there's a slide I'm looking for. Okay, so what I haven't said, and I can't find the slide for it, is that even though I call this a digital assessment, it's actually an offline assessment. So the exam is submitted online, i.e. the PDF, the exam paper, is delivered to students online on Vital on a timer. They download the PDF, work on the document offline, so it's handwritten submission, and then they upload their solutions via Vital. So Vital is only needed at the beginning of the test and at the end of the test. For the duration of the test, they don't need an internet connection. So the good thing about Turnitin, we use Turnitin for our submissions, is it preserves anonymity. We're able to allow marking to happen without names being revealed. And if a name is ever revealed, then it's permanently revealed, and there's a log of why and how and when it was revealed. So marking can happen via any browser or the iPad app, the Feedback Studio app, which is quite convenient. While the scripts are anonymous, you're not allowed to download the PDFs. Turnitin prevents you from downloading the PDFs. So this is the kind of interface we would see. So this is a simulated exam paper that have something called a grading form. You can call it a rubric if you like, but it's called a grading form in Turnitin. And examiners could enter the marks into those boxes there, click apply to grade, and it automatically adds the marks up, and that really was helpful. These grading forms, it's a painstaking process. We had to create these grading forms manually. So somebody had to go through and create a grading form for every single exam paper with every single section and subsection. And we didn't leave that up to the examiners. I did every single exam paper myself, and somebody else checked my work. That way, hopefully, there are fewer errors. For moderation, the really good thing about Turnitin is it can export a matrix of every single question and sub-question. So if a question isn't picked up, isn't marked, it can quickly show up in an Excel spreadsheet. The spreadsheet will automatically highlight it in red, and we can see what we've missed. And if the marks that are added up don't match the mark that that we've entered, again, the Excel spreadsheet will flag it up. So that saved so much time in moderation just before our Board of Examiners meeting. I've repeated the same process in Canvas, and we're going to launch this for the first time for all students for our resit exams in August. But I've used the Canvas for a few modules. I piloted it in the second semester exam. So if you want any of these templates, I'll happily share. So last couple of slides. Everything isn't necessarily the way I presented it. Things do go wrong. So Vital crashes, and it always crashes at the wrong time, and Turnitin, it doesn't always behave the way it should. Grades don't sync to Vital when you want them to, and it isn't even clear what the sync cycle is. When a grade is supposed to be hidden from a student, sometimes it isn't. And it can appear hidden to us, and some students can see their grades and some students can't, and it's all a bit of a mystery. So one needs to constantly check and double check. And if there's one thing we've learned, it's always account for human error. It's like the weather. It's not a case of if, but when mistakes happen. So we always need backup plan. Last slide. In general, centralized exam replacements work well. So students liked it, examiners liked it, and the administrators liked it. It's not as good, obviously, as a traditional exam, but I think we need to accept that traditional exams are not coming back the way they were. So we're always going to have to deal with some kind of virtual semi-open book assessment, and the sooner we adapt our expectations in terms of assessment, the better. We had a big problem with cheating when you have an open book exam, and so it's both remote and open book. It's a recipe for cheating, and a lot of work has gone in trying to prevent that. And by prevent, it's avoiding it, making it harder to happen and less worthwhile, rather than detecting it and dealing with the consequences. So I'm pretty sure I've used up more than my 10 minutes. So I'm happy to share templates and ask and answer questions.
Thank you for that, Waleed. That was really interesting. It's great to see sort of the process that you go through as well. I think sometimes we focus on the end result, don't we? But to see kind of the journey that you've been through as a team. Are there any questions for Waleed? Gail?
Sorry, I'm straight in. That was brilliant. I absolutely love that. I really like this idea of everything being centralised in one module. We've had lots of issues. Different people have different approaches, shall we say. One of the things I wanted to ask, just because of the way our programme is structured, do you have any modules that aren't what I'd call your own? How did you deal with that being on a central module?
It's difficult. Yes, you're absolutely right. We had modules from computer science and School of Engineering that weren't our own. And for that, so those couldn't be part of our central module on Vital. However, on Canvas, that isn't necessarily the case. So for that, in the timetable which we issued students, every module had a venue and a time. And the venue, between inverted commas, is where the exam is housed. So they'll look up their exam and there'll be a link to where to go. So go to the Vital page for this module, or go to the central module. And we put a little footnote that you need to read the instructions and guidelines for that department, because they will differ from ours. And it is frustrating. I was hoping that we could have had this kind of discussion last year, so that by this year there's some uniformity between at least departments in the same faculty, but it didn't happen.
Oh no, that's great. Thank you very much.
Geeta?
Hello, thanks very much, Waleed, for very useful presentation. I couldn't catch the name of the software or tool you said, the best 20 pounds you spent. Can you please explain a bit more about that? Is it for downloading and uploading the script?
Okay, it's one of many third-party software that will just allow you to create a form to submit documents. So I'm just typing in the name of the software in the chat, and for the benefit of the recording, it was called Jotform, JOTFORM.com. And for free, it'll give you a few submissions. If you pay a subscription, it'll give you a few thousand submissions. And basically, you can create a little form, and you can customize it the way you want, and then just give the students the link to the form. And then from any browser, from a tablet, from a smartphone, they can just fill in the form and upload their document. And the document ends up being sent by email to the exams office. So it turns up as an email in someone's inbox. And there's also an online record on the JotForm website. So you can export a whole spreadsheet of every single submission, time, what excuse they had for not using Vital, if it is it late, etc. So it was really, really helpful. So we've been relying heavily on that. And every time we think, should we bother renewing our subscription, it proves to be the most valuable £20 we spend.
Thank you.